My phone lit up at 6:12 on a Wednesday evening. I was in the middle of reviewing a contract when I saw the name on the screen. It was my brother. I hadn't heard from him in 11 months. Not a text, not a voicemail, not even a reaction to my Instagram stories. 11 months of nothing, and then this. "Hey, Mom and Dad are doing a big family dinner Saturday. You should come. Dad has some news." I set the phone face down on my desk. I looked at the window. Outside, the city was doing what it always does at that hour. Cabs honking, someone walking a dog, a food delivery guy weaving through traffic on a bicycle. Normal, ordinary. The world had no idea what that text meant to me. 3 days earlier, the Wall Street Journal had published a profile. Half a page, business section. My company, Meridian Labs, had just closed a $67 million Series C. There was a photo of me standing in the office, arms crossed, looking like I knew exactly what I was doing. The headline called me one of the most quietly powerful women in biotech. My brother hadn't texted me when that article dropped. He texted me 3 days later. I knew exactly what that dinner was about. I knew before I even read the second message he sent, which came 4 minutes after the first. "It'll be good to catch up. Dad really wants to see you." My dad hadn't wanted to see me at my company's launch event 2 years ago. He hadn't wanted to see me when I moved into my apartment downtown. He hadn't shown up to a single thing I'd done in the last 6 years. But now, apparently, he really wanted to see me. I picked up the phone. I typed back, "I'll be there." Then I opened my laptop and started making calls. To understand why that dinner felt like a trap, you have to understand what happened at my 30th birthday. I'm 33 now. So this was 3 years ago. I'd just left my senior research position at a pharmaceutical company to start Meridian Labs. I had one investor, a $400,000 seed round, and a team of 4 people working out of a rented lab space that smelled like rubber gloves and old carpet. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done. I turned 30 in the middle of it. I wasn't going to do anything. I was too busy, too broke, too tired. But my best friend convinced me to book a small private room at a restaurant near my office. Nothing fancy, just dinner. She said I deserved to mark the occasion, even if things were hard. I invited my parents. I invited my brother and his wife. I invited my aunt, who I'd always been close to. I made the reservation for 7 people. My friend showed up with flowers. That was it. 6 chairs sat empty. My brother texted at 7:45, "Sorry, kids are sick." Next time, his kids were 4 and 6. They didn't require both parents to stay home with a cold. My mother called at 8:15. Her voice was breathy and apologetic in that way she has when she's decided something doesn't matter enough to rearrange her schedule. "Oh, honey, your father's back is acting up again. We really wanted to be there." I said okay. I said I understood. I hung up and looked at the breadbasket. I thought about all the times I had rearranged my schedule for them. Every graduation party for my brother's kids. Every holiday dinner where I drove 4 hours. Every Sunday call my mother expected, regardless of what I had going on. I opened my phone and checked Instagram. My aunt had posted a story 20 minutes ago. It was a video from my cousin's engagement party. And there, standing by the gift table with a glass of white wine, was my mother. Her back looked fine. I put my phone away. I ate dinner alone. The food was good. I tipped 30% and drove home. I didn't call them the next day. They didn't call me either. That was how the silence started. 11 months of it. They called twice. Once at Christmas, once in February, both times asking if I was doing okay in a tone that made it clear they were actually worried. I said yes, I was fine. We exchanged pleasantries like strangers at a dentist's office, and then the journal article came out, and my brother texted me about dinner. The restaurant my parents chose was called Hadley's. It's the kind of place where the portions are small and the prices are not. White tablecloths, dim lighting, a wine list that comes in a leather binder. My parents had been going there for years. They liked places that made them feel like they had arrived somewhere. I drove myself. I had 2 cars. My everyday car, a practical gray sedan with a cracked left mirror I kept forgetting to fix, and a newer car I'd bought last spring. I took the sedan. I wore dark jeans and a plain black shirt. No jewelry. My hair was down but not styled. I looked like someone who had just come from work, which I had. I looked unremarkable. That was intentional. The hostess led me to the private room in the back. It was smaller than I remembered from the last time we'd had a family dinner here, which was maybe 5 years ago. Round table, 6 chairs, a candle in the center, a bottle of wine already open. Everyone was already there when I walked in. My mother stood up immediately. She moved toward me faster than I'd seen her move in years and hugged me so hard I took a small step back. She smelled like the perfume she's worn my whole life. "I missed you so much, sweetheart." She held my face in her hands and looked at me like she was cataloging everything that had changed. "You look tired. Are you sleeping?" I said I was sleeping fine. My father stood and hugged me too. He's a big man with a loud handshake, energy that he tries to project even when he's sitting down. "There she is," he said, like I was a surprise guest at a party he'd thrown. The biotech queen. I always said she had it in her. He had never said that. Not once. He had told me at 27 that biotech was a long shot and I should consider going back to the pharma company with a salary and benefits. But I smiled and sat down. My brother was across from me. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, a little softer in the face, like someone who'd been eating well and sleeping badly. His wife sat next to him, picking at a bread roll and not making eye contact with anyone. She'd always been uncomfortable at these dinners. I understood why. My aunt was there too, which surprised me. She was my father's sister, the one who'd been at the engagement party while I was eating birthday dinner alone. She smiled at me in that careful, cautious way that means she's been briefed on something and isn't sure how I'll react. The wine was poured. My mother raised her glass. "To family," she said, "and to our girl who is changing the world." Everyone drank. I lifted my glass and set it back down without drinking. The conversation was easy at first, the way it always is in that first stretch of a family dinner when everyone is still performing normalcy. My father talked about the property he owned, a small commercial building downtown that he'd been renting out for 15 years. My brother talked about his job, project management at a mid-sized construction firm, and the promotion he'd been passed over for twice. My mother talked about her book club and her new kitchen tile. I listened. I asked a question here and there. I ate my appetizer. I noticed things. My father was checking his watch every few minutes, which he did when he wanted to move a conversation to a specific place. My brother kept glancing at him the way you do when you're waiting for a cue. My aunt was very focused on her food, which is what she does when she wants to seem uninvolved. They were getting ready for something. I decided to give them a small push. "So," I said, setting down my fork. "Dad, my brother said you had some news about the building." The energy at the table shifted almost imperceptibly, like a room where someone just turned the thermostat up 1 degree. You couldn't see it. You could feel it. Right, my father said. He sat forward in his chair. The watch checking stopped. "I've been thinking about this for a while, and I wanted to bring the family together because this affects all of us." He reached beside his chair and pulled out a folder. He set it on the table. Inside was a prospectus. I could tell before I even opened it. Glossy pages, architect renderings, a logo at the top that someone had designed quickly and not well. Callaway Property Group, Phase 2 Expansion. "The building on Mercer Street has been a good investment," he said. 15 years of consistent rental income. But the market is changing. The tenants we have now, they're month to month. We've had 2 vacancies in the past year. I want to take the next step. I opened the folder and looked at the numbers in the margins, not the pretty pictures. Phase 2 was a mixed-use development plan. Tear down the existing building, put up a new 6-story structure, ground floor retail, upper floor residential units. On paper, it was ambitious. In practice, it required permits, construction financing, and a significant cash injection up front. "It's a beautiful project," my mother said. She was looking at me with that particular expression she uses when she wants me to be enthusiastic about something. "The architect said the design could be featured in a magazine. It's a $2.1 million project," I said. I kept my voice neutral. "Phase 1 of construction alone. That's why we wanted to talk to you," my brother said. He was doing that thing where he makes eye contact with a point just above my shoulder, so he doesn't have to fully look at me. "Dad's talked to the bank. They're on board for the construction loan, but they want to see private capital contribution up front. Equity, basically. How much up front? I asked. My father cleared his throat. He glanced at my mother. He looked back at me. 800,000. The table was very quiet. I looked at the number again in the corner of the page. I looked at the rendering of the building with its glass facade and carefully illustrated pedestrians. I looked at my father's face, which was settled into the expression he wore when he decided something was already agreed upon and was just waiting for the paperwork. 800,000, I repeated. It's an investment, he said immediately. You'd have equity. When the project is complete and the units are leased, you'd be the first to get paid back, plus 8% annually. It's better than anything you'd get in the market. Family should invest in family, my aunt said. She'd been quiet for so long, I'd almost forgotten she was there. That's how generational wealth actually gets built. I looked at her. She looked at her plate. I have a few questions, I said. Of course, my father said. Generous, magnanimous. He waved his hand like a man who has nothing to hide. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a slim tablet. The screen came on with a soft blue glow. You said the bank is on board for the construction loan, I said. Which bank? First Harbor, my father said. We've had a relationship with them for years, and they're comfortable with the current occupancy situation? I asked. My brother's jaw tightened slightly. The vacancies are short-term, he said. It's a transitional moment. That's why we're pivoting to the new structure. I scrolled through a document. I asked, because I pulled the commercial property records last week, I said. The building on Mercer Street has had an occupancy rate below 50% for 19 months. The two anchor tenants, the accounting firm and the print shop, both left in the same quarter. Their leases weren't renewed. I looked up. I also noticed that First Harbor placed a loan modification notice on the building 14 months ago. Silence. Not the silence of people thinking. The silence of people who have been caught. That's a paperwork issue, my father said. His voice had gone slightly flat. We've been in communication with them. It's being resolved. A loan modification notice isn't paperwork, I said. It means the lender flagged the loan as at risk. It means you've been in arrears. My mother put her hand on my father's arm. A steadying gesture. Sweetheart, she said, using the word like a landing pad. Your father has managed this building for 15 years. He knows this business. He's managed it well for most of those years, I said. But the last 24 months are a different story. I slid the tablet across the table so my father could see the document. The property tax filings are public record. You're 16 months behind. The county has an outstanding lien. My brother pushed back from the table slightly. Not enough to stand, just enough to create distance. His wife was very still. You investigated us, my father said. His voice was no longer smooth. I did due diligence, I said, the same way I do before any investment. We're your family, he said. The word landed differently than my mother had intended it. It came out sharp. This isn't some cold business transaction. This is your father asking for help. You asked me for $800,000, I said. That's a business transaction by definition. The table erupted, not all at once, but in the way these things go. My father's voice rising, my brother cutting in, my mother trying to act as a buffer and only making it louder. My aunt was silent, examining the tablecloth. My sister-in-law had gone somewhere far away behind her eyes. They said the things families say when they've been caught asking for money they know they don't deserve. They said I'd always been cold, that I had a gift for making everything transactional, that success had made me arrogant, that they had sacrificed for me, that this was exactly the kind of moment a family comes together, that this was what all that hard work was supposed to be for, wasn't it? Wasn't this why I'd built something? So I could help the people who raised me? I let them finish. When the table was quiet again, I said, you missed my birthday dinner 3 years ago. All of you. My mother was at my cousin's engagement party while she told me she couldn't come because Dad's back hurt. I sat at a table with 6 empty chairs. No one said anything. I'm not bringing that up to guilt you, I said. I'm bringing it up because you said, this is what family does. Supports each other. And I want you to understand that I know exactly what support has looked like in this family. My father started to speak. I kept going. The reason I did due diligence is not because I'm cold. It's because the numbers you showed me don't match reality. You don't need $800,000 for an expansion. You need it to cover the tax lien, make back payments to First Harbor, and buy yourself enough time to sell the building before the bank forces the issue. My father's face went through several colors. The building isn't an opportunity, I said. It's a liability with a pretty cover page. You don't know what you're talking about, my brother said. His voice was strained. You build apps and run labs. This is real estate. It's different. The math is the same, I said. We could lose everything, my mother said. Her composure had cracked, just at the edges. Her eyes were bright. The building is the retirement plan. If we lose it, we have nothing. Your father has worked his whole life. I know, I said. Then help us. I'm not going to give you $800,000 to delay a foreclosure by 8 months, I said. That's not help. That's a more expensive version of the same problem. My father stood up. He was breathing hard. When he gets really angry, his voice gets quieter, not louder. And that's more frightening than the shouting. I have given you everything, he said. I put a roof over your head. I paid for your education. I watched you walk out of this family the moment you thought you didn't need us anymore. And now you sit there with your tablet and your due diligence and you look at me like I'm a stranger, asking for a handout. I looked at you like a business partner presenting a deal, I said. And the deal isn't sound. Get out, he said. Just like that. Quiet and final. If this is how you want to be, then we're done. Go back to your company and your Wall Street Journal article and don't call me again. I nodded. I picked up my bag. Before I go, I said, I want to show you one more thing. I signaled to the door of the private room. It opened. My attorney walked in. Her name is Frances. She's been my attorney for 4 years, one of those people who looks like a librarian and argues like a surgeon. She was wearing a dark blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. She didn't look at my family. She walked to the table and placed a document in the center. The cover was white. It had a legal seal. What is this? My father asked. 3 weeks ago, I said, I became aware of the situation with the building. I had my team review the debt structure. The First Harbor note was up for secondary sale. They'd flagged it for their non-performing portfolio. I purchased it. The air in the room changed in a way I don't have a precise word for. It was like a pressure shift. My brother started. I own the mortgage on the Mercer Street property, I said. And last week, I also acquired the outstanding tax lien from the county, which means I am now your primary creditor on both instruments. My father sat back down. He did it slowly, like someone who'd forgotten how chair-sitting worked. My mother pressed her hand over her mouth. This is what I'm offering, I said. I opened the document Frances had placed on the table. I am not loaning you money. I'm restructuring the debt. I will forgive the tax lien in full. I will extend the mortgage by 7 years at a fixed rate of 4% below market. In exchange, I take a 49% equity stake in the building. You retain majority ownership and operational control. All decisions still go through Dad. I don't want to manage a commercial property. I want the asset protected so that when it does appreciate, and it will, that block is going to gentrify within 5 years. Everyone benefits. Nobody spoke. The alternative, Frances said, her voice completely level, is that my client exercises her rights as primary creditor and initiates foreclosure proceedings. Under the current default status, that process could begin within 30 days. My father was looking at the document. His hands were on the table, flat, very still. Why? My mother said. Her voice was careful, like she was handling something that might break. Why would you do this, after everything tonight? Why not just walk away? I looked at her for a long moment. Because I'm not doing this for you, I said. The building is worth something. The debt structure is a mess, but the underlying asset is real. In 5 years, if I'm right about the neighborhood, that equity stake is worth considerably more than what I paid for the mortgage. This is a good investment. And us? My brother asked. Something in his face had gone soft in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. What about us? You're the operators, I said. You stay involved. You keep running it. You just do it with a stable debt structure instead of a ticking clock. My father looked up from the document. For the first time all evening, the businessman's face was gone. He looked tired. He looked old in a way he hadn't when I walked in. I should have come to your birthday dinner, he said. I didn't say anything. I know that doesn't— He stopped, started again. I know that doesn't fix anything. No, I said. It doesn't. He picked up the pen. Francis watched. I watched. My brother's wife was crying quietly, though I didn't fully understand why. My father signed the document. He signed it the way you signed something you know you'll think about for the rest of your life. Slowly, like each letter cost something. He pushed the folder back across the table. Francis checked the signature. She gathered the papers with the precise, unhurried movements of someone who has closed many rooms. I'll have the finalized copies to you by Friday, she said to me. She nodded at my father, professional and brief, and left. The room was very quiet. My mother reached for my hand across the table. I let her take it this time. I want things to be different, she said. She wasn't performing now. The perfume and the glittering dress and the theatrical hug from earlier, all of that was gone. She just looked like a woman who was tired and a little frightened and reaching for her daughter. I know we haven't been fair to you. I know you know, I said. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't, not yet, maybe not for a long time. But I didn't pull my hand away either. I stayed for another 20 minutes. We didn't talk about the building or the deal or the journal article. My brother told a story about his younger kid doing something ridiculous at school. My father ate the rest of his dinner without saying much. My aunt paid her portion of the bill in cash and left early, which I thought was telling. When I stood to go, my father walked me to the door of the restaurant. Outside, the air was cool. The street was quieter than it had been when I arrived. You were always the one I didn't have to worry about, he said. I thought that meant you were fine. I was fine, I said. I just would have liked you to show up anyway. He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't expect one. I walked to my car, the sedan with the cracked mirror. I got in and I sat for a minute before starting the engine. I thought about the birthday dinner, the 6 empty chairs, the bread basket, driving home alone. I thought about the 4 years after that, the 100-hour weeks, the deals that almost fell through, the investors who told me I was too young, the lab results that came back wrong 3 times before they came back right. All of it done without a single phone call of encouragement from any of the people who had just sat around that table. I didn't feel triumphant. That's the thing nobody tells you about moments like this. You expect to feel something large and bright, vindicated, powerful, like the end of a movie where the music swells. But what I actually felt was smaller than that and more real. I felt like someone who had finally put down a very heavy bag she'd been carrying for a long time. I started the engine. I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the street. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it at the next red light. It was a text from my brother. Thank you, it said. And then after a moment, a second one. I'm sorry about the birthday dinner. I really am. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and drove. The city moved past my windows, lights and storefronts, and the ordinary, endless business of other people's lives. I didn't turn on music. I just drove and let the silence be exactly what it was. Not empty, but clean. I had built something real. Not just the company, not just the equity stake I'd walked out of that room with tonight. Something internal, something nobody had given me and nobody could take. I knew what I was worth. I had known it for years, long before the Wall Street Journal did. It had just taken everyone else a little longer to catch up. Have you ever had to stop waiting for someone's approval before you could finally start moving? Tell me in the comments, and if the story stayed with you, you know what to do. I've thought a lot about what I actually walked out of that restaurant with. Not the equity stake, though that matters, and it's real, and 5 years from now it's gonna matter more. I mean the other thing, the thing that doesn't show up in any legal document Francis prepared. There's a version of that night where I walk in angry, where I go to prove something, to make them feel small the way I felt small sitting at a birthday table with 6 empty chairs. I understand that impulse. I'm not going to pretend I never felt it. But here's what I've learned. The people who walk into rooms to wound someone usually walk out just as hollow as they walked in. The wound lands, and then what? You still have to drive home. You still have to sleep. What I walked in with instead was information. Months of quiet, careful work. I didn't make a scene at my birthday. I didn't send a long text telling my father exactly what I thought of him. I used that hurt, the only way it's actually useful. I converted it into focus. Every time I wanted to call and demand an explanation, I went back to work instead. Every time I felt the old familiar ache of wanting their approval, I reminded myself that approval is not the same thing as respect, and only one of those is worth building a life around. My father is not a bad man. I want to be clear about that. He's a man who got comfortable and stopped paying attention to his business, to his children, to the difference between what he said he valued and what he actually showed up for. That's not evil. It's just the slow erosion that happens when people stop holding themselves accountable. The consequences were always there, accumulating quietly, the way debt does. Eventually, the numbers don't lie anymore. And that's the thing about cause and effect that nobody wants to talk about. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send a warning text. It just shows up one day, usually when you're least prepared, usually at a dinner you thought you were hosting. I could have handed them $800,000 and walked away feeling like the generous one. I could have told myself that's what a good daughter does. But that money would have been gone in 8 months. The building would still have gone under, and I would have spent years resenting both them and myself. Generosity without honesty isn't generosity. It's just a more expensive way of avoiding the truth. What I gave them instead was a real structure. Accountability with a safety net. Skin in the game, for all of us. That's not cold. That's actually what it looks like when you care about someone's long-term outcome more than you care about how they feel about you in the next 10 minutes. I didn't need my father to say he was sorry. I didn't need my mother to admit she lied about the migraine. What I needed was to stop making my own decisions smaller in order to make them more comfortable. That's the work nobody tells you about. Not the fundraising, not the lab results, not the 90-hour weeks. The real work is learning to stop apologizing for taking up the space you earned. The drive home that night was quiet. No music. Just the city moving past the windows and me, finally, not waiting for anyone's signal to keep going.